Now, one more trick I want to show you is how to quickly set the start and end frame to your animation. Let's say I want my animation to start at frame 30 and then end at frame 110. I can either go manually here and then set this to frame 30, set this to frame 110. But what I usually like to do is use shortcuts. So if I go to frame 30, if I move my cursor on frame 30, what I can do is hover over the timeline and press on Control Home. Now, if I press on Control Home, it's going to set the start frame right around this timeline cursor. Now I can do the same thing. If I go to 110, instead of pressing Control Home, I'm going to press on Control End. And Home and End are very close to each other. Home is on top and End is on the bottom. I'm talking about the keys which are above the arrow keys. I'm basically going to show you a screenshot so you get the idea. So again, Control Home for the start keyframe, Control End for the end keyframe. I also want to show you how to create the preview range in Blender because that's also useful. So if you have a full animation, if I have this animation, right, the cube moves around, jumps around, change the scale, change the rotation. Let's say I only want to watch this animation over and over again to see if I like it, right? Instead of watching this. So there are two ways of doing it. One thing you can do is click on this clock button, and now I can see the borders of the timeline turn orange. Now what I can do is set the start frame to 0 and then set the end frame to 20. So now if I play my animation, you can see it's only gonna consider these borders. So if I click on this preview range and disable it, now you can see it goes back to 250. But a quick way to create a preview range is by pressing P on the keyboard, hover over the timeline, press on P, and then box select it and drag it. Now you're gonna create this preview range. If you wanna disable the preview range, you're gonna click on Alt P. Now I can press on preview range on any other keyframe. So create a preview range, for example, from here. And I can watch these animations over and over again. And do Alt P to disable it. Now let me show you another trick which might come in handy while you're working on animations. I want to show you how to jump between the keyframes. So if you remember, if you want to move across keyframe one by one, so 1, 2, 3, 4, you can either drag your own cursor like this, or you can go to your arrows on the keyboard and press it like this. Right arrow, left arrow, and so on. But sometimes you quickly want to jump from one keyframe to another, and so on. And the way you can do that is by pressing up and down arrows instead of right or left. So if I press on up arrow, I'm going to jump to the next keyframe, up arrow, next keyframe, next keyframe. Now if I press on up arrow again, Blender is going to tell me that I have no more keyframes and it's not going to jump between no more keyframes basically. No more keyframes to jump to this direction. So I can go back. I can press on the down arrow and go back like this. That's a pretty quick way to jump between your keyframes and preview your keyframes. You can also use these arrows. So these are basically the jump to keyframes. So jump to the right keyframe, jump to the left keyframe. And if you want to use that, this is basically, if I write over here, this is going to reset the location of the animation. So it's going to make me jump back to 0. So if I press this, it's going to jump to 0. If I press it, it's going to jump to the last keyframe. I don't usually use these. I sometimes might use this if I'm working on particle simulations, but that's pretty much it. One thing I want to show you is how to frame your timeline. So if you press on a home key, it's going to frame the start and end frames of your animation. You can also move to a certain keyframe and press on numpad 0 to focus on a certain keyframe. So if I go here and I want to focus on 0, I can press on numpad 0 and move it here. One more thing I want to show you is if you don't like to preview with keyframes, so if you don't like to preview with 0, 1, 2, 3 keyframes, you can hover over the timeline and press on Control T. Now if I press on Control T, it's going to convert it to seconds and minutes. If you want to do it manually, you can click on here, go to View, and then click on Use Timecode, and now it tells you to Control T is the shortcut. So I'm going to click on Timecode, and that's pretty much the same. But I'm going to disable this right now because I like to preview the keyframes instead of the timecode. Another important thing I want to show you is how to copy the keyframes, because you can do that. So if you remember, copying Blender is done by Shift-D. Now let's say I want to move to frame 82 and I want the cube to hold the same position for multiple frames. So I can hover over the keyframe, select it, press on Shift-D, move it here on frame 95, then go forward and then press on Alt-R, Alt-G, Alt-S and move it in the starting position. Now look what's going to happen. The cube is going to move, hold, and then go back to the starting position. So this is a great way to hold your animations or do any other thing you want. So as you noticed, if I copy the keyframes, they have this orange line connecting, which means that the keyframes are the same. Now if I take frame 82, press on Shift-D, and then place it right on top of frame 55, it's going to replace the entire frame 55, and now these keyframes are going to become the same. And this doesn't really make sense to keep frame 81 available, so what I can do is press on X and then delete. So now I have these two same keyframes connected with each other. So that's a great way to copy the keyframes and hold your animation if you want to. Another important thing I want to show you is if it's too annoying for you when you go to frame 0 and now you're able to leave the borders either on frame 0 or after frame 110, you can actually go to playback and change a bunch of settings. So I want to talk to you about playback. So first thing I want you to change is the limit to frame range. So if I click on playback and limit to frame range, now look what happens. If I drag my playhead on frame 0, it's locked to frame 0, and now I can no longer go back here. If I go to frame 110, I can no longer go past frame 110. If I set the start frame here or end frame here, it's going to be the same. I cannot leave my start or end frames. One thing I want to talk to you about is sync. So play every frame means you're telling Blender to play every single frame. So right now, if I go to my animation preview, if I go here, set this frame range to 30, and if I play back my animation, you can see I have 30 FPS right over here. And it plays really nicely. But if you have a large scene with a lot of characters and objects, Blender might struggle to play every frame and preview every frame. So what you can do instead is go to playback, click on play every frame, and then switch this to frame dropping. You can also sync to audio when you're working with audio, lip sync, and music, but you don't really have to do that right now. You can do frame dropping, and now you're telling Blender to drop some frames and preview the animation less accurately, but it's very useful in the long run if you're working on large scene. So I recommend you to go to playback and then set this to frame dropping whenever working on large scenes. You can keep it as it is right now, but I like to keep it on frame dropping almost all the time.